Greetings, y'all. My name is Tracy Brown. I'm an artivist, a visual artist, an educator, and the curator of the Same Game, Different Smokers exhibit, currently on view at Museo. I want to first start by thanking the sponsors who made it possible for this exhibition to even be brought to life. Carol Magruder and the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council. We thank them for their staunch work in the community around tobacco control and fighting on behalf of the Black community and all of us. And we thank them for all that they did to ensure that Same Game, Different Smokers could be brought to life. Today, I want to invite you to take a walk through the exhibit with me as I share with you some of the insights that you may not get by just visiting it on your own. I guarantee you'll learn something new, and I hope that you'll be motivated to share the word with others that you know. We start with tobacco's sacred origins. We know that tobacco was originally a sacramental plant. So it was a plant used by Native American people in their medicine and in their prayers and in their sacred work. Sacred tobacco was viewed as so sacred that to abuse it would have been a sacrilege. There is a difference between sacred tobacco and commercial tobacco. There are two different plants. So the traditional tobacco was given as gifts to European explorers and then taken back to Europe, where people began to have a greater desire for it. The commercial tobacco was tobacco that has been cultivated, genetically modified, et cetera, to increase the nicotine content so that it is much stronger and more attractive to those who are looking for that type of thing. With the increased desire for tobacco in Europe, there was a need for more labor, and for the amount of tobacco to be cultivated that was desired, they had to glean large amounts of people to do the work of cultivating it. And we have the birth of the American chattel slavery. So through the distribution of tobacco, both products and with the distribution of bulk tobacco, we see the beginning of the distribution of imagery that is very negative, not the very beginning, but the beginning of imagery with the tobacco industry that is very negative and portrays Black people in the light of servitude. We also see items like this insert that was a part of the Savage and Semi-Barbarous Chiefs and Rulers series that were distributed with cigarettes that promoted the idea of Black savagery and otherization of people of color. With the widespread distribution of tobacco products which was coupled with the widespread distribution of these images, you have the widespread distribution of these ideas. Again, the tobacco industry did not start the fire, but they definitely poured gasoline on it. Alongside the growth of the tobacco industry, you have the growth of slave patrol regulations. And many of those very regulations like the ones that you see listed here, can be directly correlated to some of the most problematic practices in modern day policing. The paddy rollers, who were poor whites who were encouraged to help catch enslaved Africans who had escaped the torturous situation of slavery, were often paid with tobacco. And again, they were empowered to accost and harass any person of African descent that they found, should they so choose. That also included their right to take their lives, should they so choose. We know that a picture is worth way more than 1,000 words. So the imagery that was distributed with the tobacco products and in the stores where the products were sold. Also promoted ideas that were erroneous, like the happy slave, also the ideas about white supremacy and the gallant and brave white man fighting against the savage Africans, and being diligent against all odds. So these are ideas that are directly connected to white supremacy, to perpetrate atrocities against another being. It makes it easier for you to do so if you dehumanize their image. And the tobacco industry's imagery definitely help with that. This coupled with the reality of their history or their historical connection to the the rise of chattel slavery means that they promoted images that directly served to provide them with an excuse for the savagery that they actually showed towards the African people, or the people of African descent, who were forced into the position of cultivating their highly profitable crops. Alongside that, we also have this history and legacy of violence against the Black body. So you had many products with very derogatory names, such as nigger hair tobacco, we see here, and coonskin cigars. Nigger hair tobacco in this ad is portrayed as a thing that you can take and place in a pipe, and the ad tells you when they fill their pipe with rich, sweet, mellow nigger hair, they know that they're smoking real tobacco, right? So this simulation of the smoking of the hair of a person of African descent. And there were also coonskin cigars. So cigars, they encourage you to smoke the shiny coonskin, and they had little limericks, et cetera, that sometimes talked about rape, that talked about other types of brutality, but also just the smoking of the skin of a Black person. And we know that coon is a pejorative term for a Black person. So in connection with this, we recognize that lynching, which was a form of mob violence, which is a form of mob violence, that was a community event, a community gathering as well. One of the most disturbing things about lynching is that once the person had been hung and burned, people would separate pieces of the Black body and either put them on display, sometimes in jars in stores, or they would send them to family members and friends as souvenirs. But either way, pieces of the Black body were removed and used as souvenirs. So to talk about taking and smoking portions of a Black person's being, that it's in concert, or it's consistent with the brutality that we found in the tradition of lynching in America. One of the main tactics for growing their new market, or growing the appreciation and use of tobacco in our community, was giving tobacco products to children as young as 9, as far as we know. We know Dave Chappelle, he started smoking at age 14. Why? Because he was given a pack of cigarettes for free when he was walking down the street. Marie Evans, who was 10 years old and is pictured in this image, is one of the people whose family sued for $152 million in damages because she was a lifelong tobacco and nicotine addict, and she passed away. So she had received free Newport cigarettes and became addicted. So we know that this is a long-standing practice, and it's a tactic that has been used against our community and continues to be used today. Let's take a look at the industry documents that we gained access to as a result of the Master Settlement Agreement. The Truth collection of documents that's held at UCSF, a University of San Francisco University College of San Francisco in California, includes a massive selection of documents that show the tobacco industry's very deliberate and very well planned out and targeted actions to target the Black community with their products. So they talk about market studies, they talk about placing ad placement, they even talk about how many ads to have in the stores, et cetera, et cetera. And we can see all of this through their own memos. So they basically told on themselves, and we found out, and we've since published those documents, and they're available for you to view even online through the UCSF Truth archives. And about 1925 is when menthol cigarettes are created. They were invented by Lloyd Spud Hughes, and the first brand of menthol cigarettes were Spud cigarettes. They were created by accident. He put some tobacco into a canister where he had menthol crystals that he was using for a breathing treatment, and he realized that they were minty fresh when he smoked them. So there's the accidental birth of minty fresh poison. Notice that these are early tobacco ads for menthol tobacco. Originally, the the menthol cigarettes were marketed to upscale white people. So they were promoted also by a penguin, the cool penguin, who was often dressed in a top hat and monocle, and many people think was the model for the character, the penguin, in Batman comics. But these are the original menthol ads. So it debunks this idea that menthol cigarettes are the Black cigarette. We don't have a Black cigarette. These are products that were created and were heavily marketed to us. And let's talk a little more about that. So with the truth documents and with the discovery that the Black community had a significant amount of money, in about the 50s, the Black community was identified as a market segment. It was known that Black people were relatively light smokers, but they talked about the Black community being a market segment that was ripe for being sold to. So then all of a sudden the images change. Now the ads feature images, beautifully produced images of Black people in professional roles, positions of knowledge and intelligence, saying things like, "The man who thinks for himself knows." We know that oftentimes Black men were called boy in an effort to emasculate and to create a situation whereby they're looked at as infantile or children, but basically to humiliate and disrespect Black men. They were often called boy. Where here you have images of Black men as being called men and being featured as technologists, as police chiefs, as people in position of power and knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. And basically this was really to get our money, to sell us images, but wrap their poisonous products around these beautiful images so that our minds associated one with the other. So this takes us to the advent of the Johnson Publishing Company and publications like Ebony and Tan and Jet. Now the tobacco industry had a new space in which to advertise to people of African descent. We loved these magazines. These magazines were part of our lives. They were almost family members. We would read them with pride, and we would tear through them to learn about Black beauty queens, and we would look at them to see the top 40 songs. We would also want to see articles that were really, really very high quality articles about things that were important to people of African descent. And the tobacco industry was one of the main funders of these publications. Our publications were so starved for funding that they gladly accepted funds from and cultivated relationships with the tobacco industry in an effort to to gain the support that they needed to keep their publications alive. So it was a very bittersweet experience. If you take a look at the ads throughout the ages that appeared in our magazines, you'll see that the images of us that are being sold to us promote things like sexuality, hypermasculinity. They even co-opt the images associated with the Black Power movement, taking terms like body and soul, which was the type of music we listened to and was very popular, and selling us ideas of freedom and fun and prosperity, etc. Once again, wrapping their poisonous products in these images. So over time, we saw that our communities were replete with these tobacco ads. The stores in our communities, the liquor stores that were already selling horribly unhealthy products, or the grocery stores, they would be covered with these tobacco ads. So density of advertising was also one of the key tactics. And we see some statistics here about the fact that menthol cigarettes were responsible for 1.5 million new smokers in the 1.5 million premature smoking-related premature deaths between 1980 and 2018. So the advertising really worked as a technique, and at the heart of that was constant bombardment of imagery. They also did things like sponsored our events. They sponsored the Cool Jazz Festival, which would obviously attract a certain population, quite a bit of Black people, and everybody back in the day who was going out to things like this remembers going to the Cool Jazz Festival. They also funded, gave money to sororities and fraternities, to nurses associations, and other professional organizations, as well as organizations like the Alvin Ailey Dance Theater. And what would often happen is the money would buy silence. Once again, our institutions were so starved for support that they would be between a rock and a hard place to garner support garner the funds that they needed to keep their institutions going. Some wonderfully beneficial and important institutions, but to be able to keep them going, oftentimes they might have to accept money from places that they may or may not have really wanted to. What the industry would do is say, we love you so much that we're promoting your products, we're promoting your events, we're promoting your cultural events and your cultural properties. And essentially they were really pretending to care about us while they killed us, because they understood that they could not give, a flying fig about our cultural lives and our cultural arts and our traditions. They really just wanted to win customers and win favor and win faithfulness. Over time, they were used and recycled ideas. So now you have this ad that was published in 1985 that talks about anti-smoking laws discriminating against Black minorities. And then you also have Reynolds American sponsoring groups like NAN to have meetings to talk about how menthol is targeting the Black community. It's going to result in additional targeting of the Black community. And the reality is our community is being targeted already with the menthol products. So banning these products is about banning the sale of them by retailers, not about criminalizing the people who are using them. So the reality is this is a conflation of the truth, but it's also a very old idea that was documented and distributed by the tobacco industry. Same thing goes with this idea of criminal intent and the underworld, etc., that people are going to be arrested for smoking menthol cigarettes. That's ludicrous. It's not something that's going to happen. The ads continued to evolve, and all the way up through the 80s, they did the same thing. They took imagery that was attractive to us. I remember my sisters dressing like this. These DJ battles, the cool mix DJ battles. Now, they've made different things that are going to appeal to us using this same tactic. the same game for different smokers. And then they even had the audacity to come up with Uptown cigarettes, the cigarette that was made specifically for Black people. And they created a package that was opened from the other end. They studied the way that Black people would actually smoke cigarettes, use cigarettes, interact with their packaging, etc. And the community rose up and made sure that the Uptown cigarettes were never a thing. So they had to quickly rush them off the market because folks were not having it. So you get to see information about that in the exhibit as well. You also see the spirit of resistance associated with the presence of these ads in our community. So you see people like Reverend Calvin Butts, as well as Mandrake, who would paint over the ads for alcohol and tobacco in their community. And they would take folks out to also carry out this community action because they understood the problem with the density of advertising. And also Hank Willis Thomas, who is a contemporary artist and incidentally, one of my favorites, he created the Fair Warning series where he removed the cigarettes from the ads to really invite us to explore what those ads are really selling us. We also have activist organizations like the African American Tobacco Control Leadership, also known as the AATCLC, who has been fighting the good fight since before 2008. The AATCLC was formed in 2008, but the activists who founded it were working way before that. Also, the Center for Black Health and Equity, previously known as NAPPEN, has been working for more than 20 years now to improve the lives and health of people of African descent. So we appreciate all of their efforts and their work, and none other than Dr. Val and and Carol Magruder, who are two of the leaders of the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council. They have definitely worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Philip Gardner to spread the word and advocate on behalf of the Black community. And we also have public officials like Malia Cohen, as well as Shaman Walton from San Francisco. They are both staunch supporters of the regulation of tobacco and the elimination of flavored tobacco, including menthol, which is a flavor in our community. So they made some groundbreaking moves that help to protect and set the tone and protect folks in our community for quite some time. When we look at the family tree for these big tobacco companies, we see that they're all intermixed and intermingled, and there are purchases and acquisitions that happen, but you'll notice that Altria also makes Philip Morris cigarettes. They make Marlboro cigarettes. They also make Juul, which is a vaping company. E-cigarette company, and they should be gone sooner rather than later, right? But they also make Blue, the electronic cigarettes. So these claims that electronic cigarettes are different, they're not smoking, et cetera, is a lie. The very same people who are killing you with Newports are killing you with electronic cigarettes. So do not fall for the okie doke. You also want to pay attention to the other products that are being once again promoted. So things like snus, the little packet of tobacco that people put between their teeth and gums that causes horrible mouth cancer and other types of cancer and other types of maladies, as well as these other vapor products that are very popular. So again, it's the same game, different smokers. And we have an old favorite here, backwoods. How many kids in the community do you see walking around with a pack of backwoods sticking out of their pockets? Flavors was one of the things that they used to catch us with cigarettes. They had all kinds of flavored cigarettes back in the day, including cloves, et cetera, et cetera. We had to get those off the market. Now they're doing the exact same thing with backwoods. So we see advertisements here where the companies are all denying that they advertised to children. These ads, these accusations have been lobbed at them for decades. Why? Because it's a tactic that they've been using for a significant amount of time. When we see blunt wrappers, we talked about backwoods, we talked about all of these cigarillos and Swisher Sweets and whatnot that come in all these flavors. What the flavors do is they cool down the tobacco and they make it much less harsh. So it makes it easier for you to smoke and easier for you to take in more tobacco, which means you're taking in more nicotine. And you know, when you become addicted to something, you need more and more and more and more. So now they're coupling tobacco addiction with the use of marijuana. Back in the day, people used to smoke cannabis using like zigzags and easy widers. Those were really popular. And even Dr. Dre's first album, well, not his first album. His first album, I guess, is kind of Dr. Dre, was The Chronic. And it was the album cover was his face inside of a zigzag package, because that's how popular they were. The East Coast rappers are the ones that first started talking about smoking blunts and rolling cigarettes in blunts. And a blunt is actually the size of a cigar. So that's where the term comes from. Know that, let's take a walk over here. As we're saying, the more things change, the more things stay the same. The vaping companies actually took an old Camel ad. This particular vaping company, Blue, took an old Camel ad and just replaced it with blue. Why? Which is the e-cigarette. This ad talked about how the doctor and more doctors smoke Camels. Well, they co-opted the exact same idea and said more doctors vape this particular brand. Why? Because they wanted to say that, to give the idea that it's healthier, et cetera, et cetera. So this is not a parody. This was an actual real ad. And that's important to know. We have e-cigarette flavors here that you'll notice them or you'll recognize them from the previous panel when we were talking about various ads and various brands of e-cigarette. What you'll also notice is this memo from 1972 that talks about the different flavors that they could market to youth. So they talk about Coca-Cola flavor, apple flavor, sweet flavor cigarette. Guess what? Those flavors definitely showed up as popular flavors in the stores when flavored tobacco was available in California. So you still see these flavors for vaping. And know that nicotine is not an innocent bystander. So it definitely is brain poison, especially when we talk about children smoking, right? Because their brains have not fully developed. So it's important to note that the targeting of youth with flavors is something that they've been doing for a long time. They know they've been doing it. This is a Brown and Williamson project report from 1972, and it's been going on for a significant amount of time. If we go back over here, we're reminded that the struggle continues. So this is an image of a plantation, a tobacco plantation in Jamaica and in 1890, and an image of a farm in Malawi, a tobacco farm in Malawi, with a child working very hard in 2019. So today, in the old ad, one of the people who observed the tobacco labor, they talked about children cultivating tobacco as young as 10 years and 12 years old, and they all get, at the time, $1.25 a day. Now, here in Malawi today, they're having the same situation where children are working and they're getting literally pennies a day. It's the same thing, same game, different workers. This is our great emancipator. Remember, we talked about it's believed that her family was bought with tobacco wealth. This is a wonderful image of Harriet Tubman that was discovered in more recent years. It's one of the younger photos of her, or one of the photos of her as a younger woman. And we have to remember that she had to escape from the brutality of slavery to help liberate us all. So we invite folks to set themselves free from tobacco slavery, from menthol slavery. And we remind people, we give them resources for how to do so. In particular, the program through Amplify, which is also an AAT-CLC project for smoking cessation, that is a wonderfully loving and caring program. We love our Black smokers. We love our smokers. And because we love them, we want to do whatever we can to support them in living their healthiest and best lives. You can also watch a film by a young man named Lincoln Mondi called Black Lives, Black Lungs. It's a short film. You can view it online, and there is a link to the film here. And we remind you that if you'd like more information, you can look at the truth documents that can be found at UCSF, as well as the Sarita Archive, which is organized by our friends at Stanford University. We want to also give a shout out to Dr. Jackler and his team for all of their help. The majority of the images that you see in the exhibit came from the Sarita Archive. They work very hard to maintain that archive, and they do an excellent job. So that's our exhibit. We hope that you can make it out when it gets to your area. In the meantime, at least you've gotten to have a glimpse of it. And remember that we have a curriculum for K through 12 that you can use to help youth learn more about tobacco and about media targeting. You know, through teaching about tobacco, you can also help them learn about what it means for them to be targeted by a particular industry. So we hope that you've enjoyed our walkthrough, and we look forward to working with you to finish the fight and continue fighting the good fight on behalf of our community and all of us. We thank you.